Well, hello there, fellow geeks and geekettes, and welcome to yet another video. Now, I'm back with more bad and sad news. I made a video yesterday about about the same thing a million people have done videos about on YouTube, and not only YouTube, but it's of course concerned with the massive layoffs or the massive firing, as I call it, at DC Comics and DC Entertainment. Now, I've covered this topic. Um, it's a disaster for a lot of people because they lost their jobs. As I said, it's a massive change, a shift towards even more changes as far as comic book publishing goes at DC at least, and collecting comic books. But as I said, as far as myself, I mostly enjoy the old stuff, the old comic books. I don't really enjoy contemporary comics, so that's not that much of a problem for me. Although it is, of course, extremely sad. It is an end of an era, and as I said, this might lead to the demise of the traditional format of publishing comic book floppies in traditional comic book stores, which, as I said, has become a cultural phenomenon in the United States of America and in Britain. And for a long time, it hasn't only been about the buying and reading comic books, but also about meeting at the comic book stores and discussing various comic book related topics there. But there is another bad news connected with the massive layoffs at DC Entertainment and DC Comics, and that is the shutdown, the complete cancellation, and deletion and destruction of DC Direct. Now, for those of you who don't know, DC Direct is an in-house manufacturer of DC collectible or DC Comics related memorabilia, such as action figures, statues, replicas, and so on and so forth. Some of them you can see behind me. All these action figures, all of them, the Batman from the games, the Batman animated series, and these so-called designer line, these are all made by DC Direct. Now I've got more, but they're out of the picture now. So DC Direct was established, I think, in 1998, and then in 2012 it was renamed to DC Collectibles, and this year actually it was renamed again back to DC Direct. And they, of course, have been a very popular manufacturer, especially among fans of DC Comics. Now, their action figures were very detailed, especially at the beginning. They were not the most articulated action figures, but I've always considered DC Direct or DC Collectibles to be like an adult collectible manufacturer. It wasn't a toy manufacturer. Lately, they have been focusing mostly on manufacturing statues, right? Either bigger ones or smaller ones, designer-oriented statues and things like that. So more of a collector-oriented products rather than toys. My personal favorites were those action figures that were made in about 2005, around that year. That's when the Blackest Night line came about. My Blackest Night action figures are actually hidden behind the animated series action figures, so you can't see them. But they were the most detailed action figures I've ever seen made by DC Direct. And Blackest Night being my favorite story from DC Comics, you can understand how I feel. Now, there have been problems inside DC Direct lately as well. There were many... sorry, I'm still have a little bit cold. There have been many figures that were... and statues that were announced and then later cancelled, so they were never released. And more they were only focusing on producing the same characters over and over again. Like Batman and Harley Quinn were the main characters they were focusing on. There were hundreds of action figures and statues made every bloody year of Batman and Harley Quinn, Superman and Wonder Woman here and there, but otherwise not very much else. Now, as I said, in the early odds, there were a lot of characters produced, and then also in about 2012 when the not rebirth, New 52 came, so there were a lot of characters there made, and then they decided to start making, probably after Blackest Night, the best line of action figures ever produced by DC Direct, and that is the Batman animated series. So, as you can see, I've got a long history with DC Direct, as well as many other people, and even though they have been having some problems lately, it is still a disastrous news. Of course, yes, there are other manufacturers making DC merchandise and memorabilia, among which you can see here Sideshow Collectibles that makes these huge high-end statues. We've got Kotobukiya, we've got Diamond Select, Mondo. This Batman from animated series is made by Mondo. This logo is made by Sideshow. We've got McFarlane, who just recently started making DC Universe figures. I've got some of them up there. So it's not the end of DC merchandise, DC action figures, but it is a sad fact, because DC Direct was a part of the DC Universe and the DC Comics, and they really have been making some top-notch collectibles, and they really were and are still one of my favorite collectible manufacturers, and I was looking forward to many of the upcoming statues that some of them I even had on pre-order, which I don't think they're going to come out now. So that's it. What do you think, my friends? Especially you, the collectors. What do you think about it? Have you had anything on pre-order yourself, or do you prefer some other manufacturers? Do you care or not? What do you think about the whole matter? Well, that would be all from me, my friends. And of course, as always, do not forget to dislike this video if you don't like it, or like this video if you like it, and subscribe to this unimportant channel of an unimportant geek talking about unimportant things. And that will be really all. See you soon, and bye.